Every action has an equal, opposite, and sometimes fatal reaction. We are breaking down 6 tragic events where a split-second tantrum or a greedy shortcut resulted in immediate mechanical death. This is a cold look at cause and effect for educational purposes. Never ignore physical boundaries. Let's see what happens when the human ego fights gravity and steel. May 2009, the Pilbara region of Western Australia. It is 2 in the morning at a massive open-pit iron mine. The shift change leaves the equipment staging area completely empty. The air smells strongly of diesel fuel and iron dust. A disgruntled maintenance worker walks alone toward a parked Caterpillar 797 haul truck. He recently received a severe disciplinary warning from his manager. Now he wants to sabotage the site to punish the mining company. He carries a sharp, heavy steel mining spike and a 10-pound sledgehammer. His target is the front left tire of the 3-story tall machine. He plans to puncture the rubber and cause a massive flat tire. He assumes this will ground the truck for days and cost the company thousands of dollars. He thinks this is a simple, victimless act of vandalism. He fails to grasp the basic laws of physics. This is not a standard truck tire. It is a highly engineered industrial pressure vessel. The tire is 13 feet tall and weighs over 10,000 pounds. Inside this incredibly thick rubber shell is a massive volume of air. This air is heavily compressed to over 100 pounds per square inch. In physics, pressure is simply a form of stored energy. When you pack a room-sized volume of air into a heavily restricted space, you essentially create a massive kinetic hazard. Engineers know that a commercial earth mover tire at full operational pressure holds the explosive kinetic energy of several sticks of dynamite. Thick layers of woven steel cables inside the rubber are the only things keeping this violent physical force contained. The worker steps right up to the dark, warm rubber. He places the sharp tip of the steel spike against the thinner sidewall of the tire. He braces his boots in the dirt. He grips the heavy sledgehammer tightly with both hands. He swings the heavy hammer with all his remaining strength. He drives the metal spike deep into the thick rubber casing. He expects to hear a loud hiss of escaping air. He expects to easily walk away into the dark shadows. Instead, he triggers a catastrophic mechanical failure. The thick steel spike rapidly slices directly through the internal tension cords. The structural integrity of the entire tire is instantly compromised. The heavy rubber casing simply cannot hold the massive internal air pressure without the support of those steel belts. The tire tears open violently. Time suddenly dilates into single milliseconds. A jagged rip tears across the rubber wall faster than a speeding bullet. The highly compressed air finally finds a weak point to escape. It erupts outward in a massive, localized shock wave of explosive decompression. The rapidly expanding air instantly shears off a huge, 80-pound slab of the heavy rubber casing. The worker has absolutely zero time to react or defend himself. Human nerve impulses travel to the brain at roughly 200 miles per hour. The invisible shock wave of expanding air pressure travels at the speed of sound. The solid wall of atmospheric pressure strikes his chest first. A fraction of a second later, the heavy chunk of jagged rubber shrapnel slams directly into his torso. The kinetic energy transfer is absolute and completely devastating. He is violently launched backward through the air by the sheer force of the blast. He flies over 30 feet before hitting the hard, compacted dirt. The immense blunt force trauma causes immediate structural failure of his entire rib cage. The extreme kinetic impact wave passes directly through bone and into his vital organs. The severe mechanical shock to his system triggers an instant cardiac arrest. The loss of consciousness is absolute. It is a completely fatal injury, delivered in a fraction of a second by the sudden mechanical failure. The deafening boom of the blowout echoes across the empty quarry like a heavy artillery shell. A massive cloud of thick red dust is kicked up by the blast, slowly settling over the quiet staging area. The giant yellow truck remains perfectly still. It just tilts slightly to the left on its newly ruined steel rim. The heavy metal sledgehammer lies abandoned in the dirt nearby. The only sound left in the heavy night air is the quiet, rhythmic ticking of the truck's massive engine block cooling down under the cold desert stars. October 2004, Houston, Texas. An angry man sits gripping the steering wheel of a massive Ford F-350 pickup truck, vibrating with pure, unchecked rage. Outside his heavy cabin, heavy security floodlights illuminate the pristine driveway of an exclusive gated community on a hot autumn evening. The security guard inside the booth has just firmly denied him entry to the private neighborhood. The driver's fragile ego is deeply bruised by this rejection. His overwhelming sense of entitlement demands immediate satisfaction. He completely refuses to put the heavy truck in reverse. He refuses to leave the property peacefully. He stares intensely at the barrier blocking his path. It is a single, brightly painted plastic boom arm. It looks incredibly flimsy and cheap. To him, it looks like an intentional insult. He makes a rapid, emotion-driven decision to simply drive right through it. He assumes the hollow plastic arm will snap effortlessly over his heavy steel grille guard. He shifts the heavy automatic transmission into drive. He does not put on his seatbelt. He is entirely focused on the white plastic arm in front of him. Because of this blind rage, he completely misses the critical engineering detail waiting in the shadows. He does not see the unforgiving architecture of modern security systems. The plastic arm is merely a polite visual warning for normal drivers. Directly behind it, painted matte black to blend seamlessly into the dark asphalt, stands a heavy-duty security bollard. It is a solid cylinder of hardened steel. It is 3 feet tall and filled to the brim with densely poured concrete. More importantly, it is anchored deeply into a massive subterranean reinforced concrete foundation. This specific mechanism is engineered by experts to bring a speeding commercial delivery truck to a complete, immediate stop. It is a literal, immovable object. The driver's 7,000-pound pickup truck is about to become the unstoppable force. The physics of kinetic energy are entirely unforgiving. In physics, kinetic energy equals mass times velocity squared. This means if you double your vehicle's speed, you actually quadruple its destructive force. A massive truck moving at 40 miles per hour carries enough kinetic energy to instantly demolish a small building. That immense energy cannot simply disappear into thin air. If the vehicle is stopped instantly by an object, that massive energy must be fully absorbed by the vehicle itself. The driver violently presses his heavy boot down hard on the accelerator pedal. The massive diesel engine roars loudly, vibrating the entire cabin. The heavy rear tires screech aggressively against the pavement. They bite into the asphalt and launch the massive truck forward. He covers the short distance to the gate in just a few seconds. He grips the leather steering wheel tightly. He braces his body for a very minor bump against the plastic. The heavy front steel grille of the truck makes contact with the brightly painted arm. The plastic shatters instantly. It snaps away in a shower of completely harmless white splinters. For a fraction of a second, the driver feels a surge of triumphant satisfaction. He truly believes he has won the argument. Exactly 1/10 of a second later, his heavy steel front bumper strikes the black steel bollard. The timeline suddenly fractures into milliseconds. The solid steel bollard does not bend. It does not yield a single millimeter to the truck. The massive forward momentum of the heavy vehicle is arrested in exactly 0.2 seconds. This creates a catastrophic deceleration event. The front bumper completely disintegrates upon impact. The heavy steel frame rails of the truck severely buckle and fold upward like cheap tin. The immense kinetic energy flows violently backward through the metal chassis. The heavy cast iron engine block is brutally displaced from its factory mounts. The unyielding force shoves it directly backward through the firewall and into the cabin. The interior architecture suffers total structural failure. The steering column is driven backward like a massive industrial piston. By the fundamental laws of physics, an object in motion stays in motion. Because he is unrestrained, the driver is thrown violently forward by his own inertia. The steering wheel strikes his chest with the concentrated kinetic force of a falling boulder. The extreme deceleration forces cause catastrophic compression trauma to his thoracic cavity. The mechanical energy transfer is absolute and completely devastating. There is an instant loss of consciousness. The massive blunt force trauma triggers an immediate cardiac arrest. It is a completely non-survivable physical event. The deafening sound of crunching steel and shattering glass abruptly stops. A heavy cloud of hot white steam erupts from the violently crushed radiator. It hisses loudly into the quiet night air. Green engine coolant drips slowly onto the warm asphalt, pooling quietly around the base of the obstacle. The radio inside the completely mangled, compressed cabin continues to play a cheerful pop song. Broken plastic shards of the fake gate litter the ground everywhere. Standing amidst the steaming mechanical wreckage, the black steel bollard remains perfectly upright, completely undamaged by the impact. December 2014, United Kingdom. Built directly into the thick brick wall of a local bank is an automated teller machine. It is a heavy steel box holding thousands of pounds in cash, designed to withstand extreme physical abuse. At 2 in the morning, a lone man walks up to the glowing screen on a freezing, wind-swept residential street. He is not here to check his balance. He carries a large canvas bag containing 2 heavy metal cylinders. One cylinder holds pure oxygen. The other cylinder holds acetylene gas. His plan is a very common but highly reckless theft method. He wants to pump the gas mixture into the cash slot and ignite it. He wrongly assumes this small explosion will simply pop the heavy safe door open. His greed completely blinds his basic logic. He does not understand the violent physical laws of confined space explosions. Acetylene is an industrial welding gas. It burns at extremely high temperatures. When mixed directly with pure oxygen inside a sealed metal box, it does not just burn safely, it creates a massive and rapid chemical reaction. The thief inserts a thin rubber hose directly into the narrow cash dispenser. He opens the brass valves. He blindly pumps a huge volume of the invisible gas straight into the machine. This is his fatal error. He completely overestimates the empty space inside the ATM. The steel vault is already packed tightly with plastic, cash cassettes, and dense computer parts. The explosive vapor quickly displaces the normal air. It violently forces its way into every microscopic gap. The thief stands less than 3 feet away from the thick steel panel. He wears a heavy winter coat. He falsely believes this fabric will protect him from flying plastic debris. He pulls out a long electrical spark generator. He is standing at the exact epicenter of a catastrophic pressure trap he just built. The heavy steel ATM is now a sealed pressure vessel. He confidently presses the plastic ignition trigger. Time suddenly slows down to single milliseconds. A tiny blue spark jumps across the metal contacts inside the machine. It instantly ignites the trapped gas mixture. The massive chemical reaction happens in a fraction of a second. The rapidly expanding hot gas suddenly requires thousands of times more space than the small steel vault can ever provide. An extreme overpressure event occurs. The thick steel casing simply cannot vent the massive pressure spike fast enough. The explosive kinetic force must go somewhere. It always follows the path of least physical resistance. That exact path is the heavy front panel of the machine. The solid steel door abruptly ruptures. An invisible shockwave of kinetic energy erupts outward into the cold street. The heavy metal door is sheared away from its internal hinges. It instantly becomes a heavy, high-velocity projectile. The thief does not even see the bright flash of light. Human reaction time is roughly a quarter of a second. The violent, invisible shockwave travels much faster than the speed of sound. The thick metal panel strikes him point blank in the chest. A dense cloud of sharp internal shrapnel follows immediately behind it. The kinetic energy transfer is absolute and devastating. The solid flying metal violently impacts his torso. The massive blunt force trauma causes immediate structural failure of his entire skeletal system. The violent atmospheric shock wave severely damages his delicate internal organs. His central nervous system is instantly overwhelmed by the sudden mechanical impact. There is an immediate and permanent loss of consciousness. The extreme physical trauma to his chest cavity triggers an instant cardiac arrest. It is a completely fatal physical event. The unforgiving laws of thermodynamics dictate the final outcome. A deafening boom echoes violently down the empty street. It shakes the nearby glass windows. Car alarms immediately begin blaring loudly in the dark distance. A thick cloud of gray smoke and pulverized brick dust slowly clears from the wall. The front of the bank is completely destroyed. Burned 20-pound notes flutter slowly in the cold winter wind. They scatter uselessly across the freezing asphalt. The thief lies perfectly motionless on the dark pavement amidst the heavy debris. Deep inside the blackened, twisted crater of the brick wall, a damaged computer motherboard continues to beep faintly. The cold digital system patiently waits for a network response that will never come. March 2003, Illinois. A drunken patron is furiously angry at the very end of lane number 7. Around him, it is a loud and busy Friday night in a crowded suburban bowling alley, smelling heavily of synthetic floor wax and stale beer. His brightly colored bowling ball is firmly stuck in the right gutter, resting just out of reach of the heavy machinery. He is highly intoxicated. His basic judgment is completely compromised by alcohol and entitlement. Instead of pushing the call button to wait for the maintenance staff, he makes a terrible decision. He decides to walk directly down the heavily oiled wooden lane to get the ball himself. He slips slightly on the smooth surface as he approaches the dark mechanical pit. He crosses the invisible foul line. He directly enters the automated territory of the mechanical pin setter. He views the machine as a broken toy that is ruining his fun. He has absolutely no understanding of heavy industrial engineering. He stops right at the edge of the dark mechanical pit. He angrily kicks the metal side of the heavy casing with his heavy boot. This aggressive vibration triggers a fatal sequence of automated events. The modern bowling alley pin setter is a massive industrial robot. It is driven by a heavy solid steel camshaft. It is powered by a very strong industrial electric motor. The entire system operates strictly on physical timing gears and heavy metal levers. It does not have any modern optical safety sensors. It cannot see a human being standing below it. It cannot feel a soft biological obstacle in its path. If the switch is triggered, it will blindly execute its heavy mechanical cycle until it finishes its rotation. The heavy kinetic impact of his angry boot accidentally trips the internal mechanical reset lever. The massive electric motor immediately engages in the dark shadows above him. The heavy steel sweep bar suddenly drops down. This is the thick metal arm designed to push heavy fallen wooden pins into the deep pit. It weighs over 250 pounds. The patron does not look up at the loud mechanical noise. He carelessly bends at the waist. He reaches his bare arms down into the dark gutter to grab his stuck ball. He puts his head and neck directly into the active mechanical sweep zone. Time instantly runs out for him. The massive steel sweep bar rapidly descends directly behind his head. The heavy solid metal strikes the back of his neck with immense downward force. The powerful electric motor does not stall upon contact. The heavy steel gears continue to turn without any hesitation. The unforgiving steel camshaft applies massive rotational torque to the descending bar. The heavy machine forcibly pushes his upper body down. It mechanically pins the back of his neck directly against the solid wooden floor. The mechanical pressure is absolute and overwhelming. The immense weight of the solid steel bar combines with the relentless driving force of the industrial motor. This creates extreme mechanical compression. The immense localized pressure causes catastrophic structural failure of his cervical vertebrae. His airway is instantly compromised against the dense wood. The extreme compression instantly disrupts his central nervous system. There is an immediate and total loss of consciousness. The continuous crushing force heavily restricts his blood flow and triggers a fatal cardiac arrest. The fragile human body simply cannot resist the extreme torque of a heavy industrial machine. It is a completely non-survivable mechanical injury. The machine finally completes its automated sweep cycle without any further interruption. The heavy steel bar smoothly retracts back up into the dark sealing machinery. A fresh set of heavy white pins is perfectly placed onto the polished floor by the robotic arm. The loud pop music continues playing over the overhead speakers. The bright neon lights reflect sharply off the perfectly waxed wood of the empty lane. The patron lies entirely motionless in the dark right gutter. His brightly colored bowling ball remains firmly stuck right next to his hand. The continuous rumble of other heavy bowling balls striking wooden pins continues echoing loudly through the large building. The games around him go on, completely ignoring the silent physical reality in the shadows. July 2008, Newport Beach, California. A brand new high-performance personal watercraft sits tied to a floating wooden pontoon. The coastal night surrounding the high-security marina is pitch black, blocked by a thick marine layer. A thief quietly steps onto the dock, targeting the expensive vehicle. This is not a cheap recreational toy. It is a massive, highly engineered machine weighing over 900 pounds and boasting a supercharged marine engine. The thief expertly manages to bypass the electronic security and hotwire the ignition in the shadows. The engine idles with a deep, powerful rumble. He wants to make a fast, spectacular getaway across the open bay to avoid the harbor patrol. His heart is pounding with heavy adrenaline. His eyes are locked entirely on the distant, glowing city lights across the water. He completely ignores the dark, immediate area right in front of the dock. His human vision is simply not adapted to the heavy darkness. Because of this blind rush, he completely misses a critical, silent threat. He decides to take a quick shortcut through a narrow gap between two private pontoons. He does not know the local layout. He does not know that a marina worker recently secured a large yacht for an incoming tidal surge. A thick, industrial-grade black nylon storm rope is stretched tightly between two heavy wooden pilings across that exact gap. It sits exactly 4 feet above the dark, choppy water surface. The heavy rope is pulled completely taut using a mechanical steel winch. It is tightened exactly like a massive, thick guitar string. Nylon is an incredibly strong synthetic polymer. When pulled tight, it loses its flexibility and becomes a rigid physical barrier. A black rope set against a pitch-black background of dark water is virtually invisible to the human eye. The thief sits proudly upright on the wet leather seat. He aggressively grips the handlebars. He violently punches the thumb throttle to the absolute maximum limit. The heavy internal jet pump instantly engages. It violently sucks in hundreds of gallons of water and blasts it out the rear nozzle. The heavy fiberglass machine surges forward instantly. It aggressively cuts through the calm water. It accelerates to 45 miles per hour in just 3 short seconds. The low, sleek profile of the fiberglass hull easily passes right under the heavy black rope. The machine clears the dangerous obstacle perfectly without a scratch. The rider sitting high on top of the seat does not. Time suddenly dilates down into single, unforgiving milliseconds. The human body is currently traveling forward at roughly 66 feet per second. The heavy black nylon rope suddenly acts as an absolute, unyielding kinetic barrier. It catches the speeding rider squarely across the upper chest and the front of his neck. At this specific velocity, hitting a tightly stretched stationary rope is exactly like hitting a solid brick wall. The massive kinetic energy must be transferred immediately into the soft biological tissue. The heavy fiberglass machine continues moving rapidly forward over the water beneath him. The friction of the wet seat violently pulls the lower half of his body forward. However, his upper body is instantly and completely arrested in physical space by the thick rope. This creates a devastating high-speed fulcrum effect. The sudden, absolute interruption of his forward inertia is entirely unforgiving. The massive, concentrated deceleration forces cause an immediate and catastrophic structural failure of his entire cervical spine. The extreme physical hyperextension instantly compromises his delicate spinal cord. This severely disrupts his entire central nervous system in a fraction of a second. There is an instant and completely permanent loss of human consciousness. The massive blunt force trauma to his airway and spine directly triggers an immediate cardiac arrest. It is a completely fatal physical event. It is dictated entirely by the sudden, violent transfer of mechanical kinetic energy. The rider's completely limp body is thrown backward off the speeding machine. He plunges heavily into the cold, dark salt water. The heavy watercraft, now completely riderless, continues skipping rapidly and loudly across the black bay. It eventually crashes blindly into a distant concrete seawall. Back at the quiet marina, the heavy wooden pilings creak softly in the water. The thick black nylon rope simply vibrates silently in the dark. The cold ocean tide slowly washes over the empty wooden dock. August 2010, Daejeon, South Korea. A deeply frustrated man is walking rapidly down the bright marble hallway of a modern commercial complex. He is aggressively pushing a heavy, solid metal luggage cart. He desperately wants to catch the descending passenger cabin. The entire structure around him operates on a massive, hidden network of heavy electrical motors and counterweights. But he misses the boarding window by exactly 1 single second. The heavy steel doors glide smoothly shut right in front of his face. The red numbers indicate the cabin is already moving down to the 3rd floor. The man becomes absolutely furious. A sudden surge of unchecked anger completely overrides his basic logical reasoning. He views the closed steel doors as a deliberate personal insult. He makes a highly irrational and fatal decision. He decides to punish the inanimate metal barrier. He intends to use his heavy metal cart as a blunt battering ram to force the doors open. He fundamentally misunderstands the mechanical engineering of modern elevator systems. The large panels are indeed made of heavy reinforced steel. However, they are not solid anchored structural walls. They simply hang heavily from thick steel tracks located inside the top frame. At the bottom, they are only guided by very small plastic and metal sliding tabs. These tiny tabs sit loosely inside a very shallow metal groove in the floor. This specific engineering design is strictly meant to withstand gentle lateral opening movements. These small bottom guides are absolutely not designed to absorb massive, concentrated blunt force impacts from a frontal assault. The angry man backs the heavy metal cart up several feet. He grips the hard plastic handle very tightly. He runs aggressively forward. He uses his entire body weight in the dense mass of the cart to strike the center of the doors. A loud metallic bang echoes down the quiet marble hallway. The heavy doors bow inward slightly under the pressure, but they hold their ground. The man's rage completely blinds his instinct for self-preservation. He does not stop to think about the deep, completely empty mechanical void waiting just inches behind that thin metal barrier. He backs up the cart a second time. He forcefully rams the doors again. The metal groans loudly under the intense kinetic strain. He backs up for a third and final strike. He builds even more forward momentum. He runs forward at his absolute maximum speed. He aggressively commits all of his physical weight and forward inertia to this final heavy blow. The focused kinetic impact of the heavy metal cart is simply too much for the small bottom guides to handle. The strict mechanical limits of the metal are suddenly exceeded. The tiny bottom tabs violently shear completely off their metal tracks. The heavy steel doors instantly detach at the base. They swing freely inward into the dark, empty shaft like a giant metal flap. The physical barrier simply vanishes into thin air. Time instantly dilates as gravity takes absolute control of the situation. The man is already leaning heavily forward over the handle of the metal cart. He has fully committed his entire center of gravity to the aggressive forward strike. With the steel doors suddenly gone, the laws of physics take over immediately. He completely loses his balance. He tumbles violently forward into the pitch-black elevator shaft. He is still tightly gripping the heavy metal cart. Gravity immediately accelerates his falling mass at exactly 9.8 meters per second squared. He free falls through the dark, echoing, concrete shaft for exactly 3 full stories. The heavy passenger cabin is currently parked completely still down on the first floor. The sudden, violent impact against the solid steel roof of the elevator cabin abruptly halts his downward momentum. The massive, instantaneous deceleration is entirely catastrophic. It transfers immense kinetic energy directly into his fragile biological structure. The extreme blunt force trauma causes immediate total structural failure of his cranium and spinal column. His central nervous system is instantly and permanently destroyed by the severe mechanical shock. There is an immediate and absolute loss of consciousness upon impact. The massive physical trauma guarantees an instant, fatal cardiac arrest. It is a completely non-survivable vertical drop. His fate was dictated entirely by his own blind momentum and the unforgiving law of gravity. The deafening crash echoes violently up the concrete walls of the dark shaft. Then there is only total silence. A single loose plastic wheel from the mangled metal cart slowly spins on the dented steel roof of the cabin below. High up on the bright marble floor, the broken steel doors hang crookedly over the empty black abyss. The red digital numbers above the empty doorway quietly continue to glow. Subscribe and like if you respect the unforgiving laws of reality. Now I need a brutally honest answer in the comments. Did you feel even a single ounce of pity for the driver who rammed the bollard? Or the guy who kicked the pin setter? Or is natural selection just doing its job perfectly? Don't give me the polite answer. Tell me the cold truth down below.